Hi everyone. Today I have for you a pre-recorded Vedic Astrology birth chart reading. This is a new option from my shop at FionaMarques.com. If you would like a discrete recorded Vedic Astrology birth chart reading that is on YouTube, you can go and purchase that from the shop right now. Today I'm going to be covering the context of these pre-recorded Vedic Astrology birth readings and share a little bit about how that's come about. And then we're going to spend some time just looking at the noticeable features of the chart. This is not directly answering the question that the person asked, but just taking the time to really appreciate and marvel at the unique structure of everyone's chart. And then we will look at the specific question that was the prompt for this birth chart reading. And because of the type of question, we're going to look at some timing and then what to do from here. What do you do from your Vedic Astrology birth reading? So to get started, let's talk about the context of a pre-recorded reading, because obviously it has limitations. I love doing my readings live with someone on Zoom because it gives me a chance to calibrate all the research that I've done. I can be pitching it and tweaking it based on how it's received, and the feedback that I'm getting helps me know the indicators that I've researched, how they're actually showing up in the person's life. That's not the case in this pre-recorded version. So we have some limitations, which is that we can only speak to the data. That means that we're really dependent on the right birth time and the right birthplace. So those are more important than ever on these pre-recorded readings. And as you know, with astrology, it's a language that is symbolic in lots of ways. So it's giving symbols that as you build the layers of that language, you hope to refine what those indicators are. But the astrologer is always synthesizing that, and I might make the wrong guesses and assumptions in this pre-recorded reading. So as you're listening to it, also engage your own creativity, your own intuition, because if we were to just take Jupiter as an example of an indicator, we know that Jupiter represents husbands in all charts for people looking for a male partner. It represents children in everybody's chart. It represents money. It represents wisdom. It represents our teacher and guru, and on and on and on. And then what it represents in the first house can relate to the body, or it could relate to the personality, or it could relate to our path that we're undertaking. So those are all guesses and interpretations as well. And then the field that it takes place is got its own unique symbology that it's adding to. So I'm putting all those layers together and looking for the confluence where things keep lining up, and that helps me know how it's probably manifesting in the chart, but I might not always get that right. So if you can also engage your open listening and allow your own intuition and dreaming to pick up on perhaps where I've interpreted incorrectly what the symbology is speaking to. And then, just like when I was a massage therapist, being an astrologer, one tends to focus on the challenges and obstacles in the chart, because that is what people come and talk to you about. If something's working really well in their life, they don't necessarily ever need to talk to an astrologer about it, because it just clicks, works, shows up on time, is always ready, always predictable. So as an astrologer, you tend to get questions about things that are more difficult in a chart, and it leads you to have a habit of, just like the massage therapist, going for those deep, tight spots. It leads you to have the habit to look at those things. So I just wanted to put that bias that I have been an astrologer for a while, and I probably tend to research more in that area than in the areas of delight and where things are going well. So when we're looking at a pre-recorded reading, one wants to focus on what is empowering. There is a reason why the person has reached out at this time, and we've got to kind of accept the magic that for some reason this person has contacted this astrologer at this time, and whatever we say, whatever comes out in this recording, there must be something important that prompted that decision. So we're listening for those things, but the things that are off the mark that are not helpful, that speak to a part of you that's long been developed, long been improved, transformed, we could just let those go. So we want to take from this reading the things that are empowering, that are validating, that connect us with our authentic self. Everything else, just let that be the seeds blowing in the breeze, just let them keep going and flowing, and they're going somewhere else. They're not for this conversation now. So you don't want to feel ever that our chart is limiting us or describing us in a way that constrains us from being our full self. So look for those parts of the reading that really resonate with that inner joy, that inner light, and we feel proud of ourselves. That's, feel that love for the self through the chart. That's what we're looking for. So take those bits. Everything else is just the chaff from those seeds flying out into the air. We don't need the chaff. We just need those seeds. So that's the main thing to take away, is to, just like we talk about this in psychology or in self-help, I remember reading Emotional Intelligence when it first came out and talking about how to improve one's emotional intelligence, improve one's strengths, focus on the things that are already going well, and it will lift the whole of your emotional intelligence. And it's a bit like that with astrology as well, like focusing on what really validates you and connects you with your true self. That's the bit to focus on. Okay, so let's begin by looking at the noticeable features of this chart. Obviously, my intention here is to anonymize enough that this session can be of use, but it can't be traced back to the specific birth chart. So here we have a representation of the birth chart on the left. I'm displaying it in South Indian style. And let's just recap those 3 things that you need to know to be able to read South Indian chart. The first one is that in South Indian, it is the night sky that stays still, or the zodiac that stays still. So one will always find Aries in this second box on the top row. And right next door, going clockwise, will be Taurus, and this first corner is always Gemini. And then we have Cancer and Leo, and the first bottom corner is Virgo. And then we move across for Libra and Scorpio, Sagittarius, coming up the hill for Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So the night sky stays still in South Indian chart. The second thing to know is that we have the planets placed as they were at the moment of this event. So beginning in Aries, we have the moon with Rahu, no planets in Taurus or Gemini, or Cancer or Leo or Virgo. Then we have Ketu in Libra, and Ketu is the partner to Rahu. These are the nodes of the moon. This is the rising, this is the descending node, the south node, and they are important in Vedic astrology. They mark our evolutionary journey beyond this lifetime. So kind of give us an insight through various lifetimes. And you can't see them with the naked eye. They're a mathematical point. So they just mark the point where the orbit of the moon around the Earth intersects with the Earth's orbit around the sun, and it creates eclipses twice a year. So Rahu and Ketu. Rahu was in Aries. Ketu is in Libra. Then in Scorpio, we actually have 3 planets. We've got Venus, Sun, and Mercury. And Saturn is in Sagittarius. No planets in Capricorn. Mars is in Aquarius. And Jupiter rounds out our tour of the zodiac by being in Pisces. So now we know 2 things about the chart. We know where the fields of energy are. That is the signs, the rashis. And we also know where the planets were at the time. The final thing to know is where on planet Earth did this take place? And that is a really important thing to remember about all astrology charts, is that actually this is a chart about the Earth. That's the most important planet in Vedic astrology, is the Earth. And here it is, like the paper that the chart is made on. It's everything. There is nothing here that is not representing planet Earth. And that is why this number 1 with the ascendant represents the energy field that was rising on the eastern horizon at the moment of this event. And in Vedic astrology, we tend to, wherever that degree fell, whichever Rashi it fell into, we call that whole sign the first house. And that makes, in this chart, Cancer the first house. And that's why you can see over on the left here, it's a Cancer ascendant. So you could say that Cancer was the sign rising. That's why it's a Cancer rising, or it's a Cancer Lagna. And for the purposes of our diagram, I have put in number 1 there to remind us that that is the first house. And again, moving clockwise, that makes second house Leo, third house Gemini, all the way around clockwise until we get to the 12th house being Gemini. So now we know those 3 important things about the South Indian chart: the energy fields, the Rashis, we know where the planets are, and we know where this event took place on planet Earth because it's marked by the rising sign. Okay, so what else is noticeable about this chart? And we already articulated that we have a Cancer ascendant. And each of the ascendants has a unique way of distributing the planetary lords into houses that they rule. So every ascendant has its own unique field. And when we're looking at a Cancer ascendant, we know that Moon is the planet that looks after Cancer. And in this chart, it is located in the 10th house in Aries. So this is quite significant because the 10th house is the highest house in the top of the sky. So the moon was right up there, bright in the sky. And actually it was nearly a full moon, you can see, right? It was coming up to being a full moon. So the ascendant lord, the moon, is very well placed in the 10th house. The 10th house is an angle, and the angles are the first house, the 4th house, the 7th, and the 10th. And those houses are seen as being extra activated, that these are the areas of life where the energy is suited to manifesting. And the first house represents body, the 4th house represents home and heart, 7th house represents partner, and the 10th house represents our activity outside of the home. So those are really important and activated houses. And here we have the moon in the 10th house. So the ascendant lord is in the most activated angle. So we know that the moon is going to be really important in this chart. And what do we also notice straight away is that it is with Rahu. And this is any time a planet is with a node, we know that it creates a bit of unpredictability in how that planet will perform, because the nodes, as we mentioned, are related to our eclipse cycle, the Earth's eclipse cycles. And eclipses are weird and strange. They're that time when either the moon disappears or the moon blocks the sun for a moment and the sunlight disappears. So the nodes are always interesting. When they're with a planet, that creates an extra interest. When it's with the ascendant lord and it's in the 10th house, that creates even more. So the moon is already a very intuitive planet. We can think of the moon as connecting, as we said, with Cancer, that feminine sign, feminine energy, water energy, flowing and adaptable, and a reflection of the sunlight. So while we cannot look directly at the sun, we can look directly at the moon. It's a way it translates that brightness of the sun into a form that we can observe and absorb. So the moon has this feminine intuitive energy, and when it's with Rahu, that's even more heightened, right? Because Rahu is a bit psychic and a bit already connected to intuition. And Rahu and Ketu are representing the mythology of a serpent demon that was cut in half, and the tail, which is Ketu, represents where we've come from in our previous incarnations, the area of life that we've already claimed as a bastion, as a land that we've claimed and discovered and conquered. It's our expertise or our safe zone, something that we're really good at. And Rahu is the opposite of that. It's the explorer and the outcast out there charting new territory. And that's why it can be a bit psychic, right? Because it's seeing things that we don't even understand yet. It's taking our awareness to an area of life that we haven't explored yet. And when we put that with the moon, we can often have heightened intuition that may come in flashes of brilliance that, are not linguistic, not verbal or logical. They're just complete knowing or complete ideas. And it can give us, some zany ideas too. So the moon with Rahu, very noticeable feature of this chart. Now, another noticeable feature of this chart is we have Mars. That is the planet that owns Aries. So we've been speaking about the 10th house of Aries. It is owned by Mars. Mars is here in Aquarius in the 8th house. But Mars, for all Cancer ascendants, rules Scorpio. It rules Scorpio and Aries for everybody. But for Cancer ascendants, that means that it rules the 5th house and the 10th house. And this is a natural Raja Yoga. And why do we say that? Because we've already talked about the 10th house is an angle and the 5th house is a trine. So the trinal houses are the 1st house, the 5th house, and the 9th house. And the trinal houses have a sense of grace, a sense of ease and dharma, that one is doing the right thing. And when we combine that graceful energy with an angle, we call it a Raja Yoga because it feels a bit like the wind is in your sails if you are a yacht, like you're just being pushed along in the right direction. You're not having to make too much effort and the direction that you're going in feels absolutely right. So Vedic astrology loves that combination of trinal numbers and angular numbers. And we have that naturally for all Cancer ascendants in the planet Mars because it rules the 5th house and the 10th house for all Cancer ascendants, linking the 5th house of our legacy and creativity and children with the 10th house of our activity and fame and what we're known for. And in this chart, we see that Mars has gone into the 8th house. And the 8th house is a moksha house. Right now, we just have actually a podcast episode out about the 8th house, so maybe you can go listen to that. The 8th house is a moksha house that deals with all occult knowledge. And that sounds really a bit freaky to me in my Australian lingo, but occult just means hidden, basically. And so all that knowledge that's below the surface. So astrology is a good example of occult knowledge because it has been hidden for many generations in the West and because it describes the hidden workings behind the material life that we see in front of us. But it can also be things like psychology because that is understanding how someone works, what makes them tick, their mind and their emotions and personalities. So psychology is represented in the 8th house. But also anything that we dig deeply into. So investigation, research, analysis, all that kind of investigative type of work. So this chart is kind of indicating to us that the person's work, the 10th house of work, might be involved with either astrology or psychology or something that is analysis that involves researching and digging into. That would be a great match for this chart and probably gives the person that sense that they're doing the right thing and they're contributing. Now, another noticeable feature is that Jupiter is here in Pisces in the 9th house and it is the 9th lord because it owns Pisces. So we have the 9th lord in the 9th house and that feels extra noticeable because Jupiter is connected to the natural 9th sign of the zodiac, which is Sagittarius. So we've got a lot of repeating kind of confluence around Jupiter being well supported, naturally connected to the 9th. The 9th relates to marriage and it also relates to meaning and purpose, a sense of doing something worthwhile and contributing to Dharma because Dharma is, the 9th house is Dharmic, it's a trinal house, but also Jupiter has that mission as well. So it's quite a noticeable feature of the chart. As well as that, there are other noticeable features too. One is that we have Rahu and Ketu on angles. We have them in the 4th house and the 10th house. And when we see that, it often indicates that the person is breaking with their family tradition, perhaps their ancestral karma or their family karma, and they're striking out on their own. And this can make them, in some ways, an outcast, or in some ways a trailblazer, or can give that feeling that the mission that's important to them from the beginning of their life, whatever that was, is maybe not quite the same as the people that they're growing up with. So they might feel like they're a little bit different and have to strike out on their own path. So, and Rahu and Ketu are malefics in Vedic astrology, and their way of teaching is brutal, and they certainly don't give you an instruction manual or any warning. They really teach by experience, and that experience is a little bit like being thrown in the deep end. So, and when they're on angles, can be even more accentuated. So sort of a little bit like the breaks and changes. We would expect that Rahu and Ketu on angles have been noticeable for this person. But one of the things an astrologer likes to do is look at how the person might feel about that at the end of all of this. And we can look at the Navamsha to see what happens to the generic lords of Rahu and Ketu. And that is Saturn for Rahu and Mars for Ketu. And sometimes you see in people's chart that, for example, Saturn improves in the Navamsha. So you think that the Rahu path is going to feel good in the end. No matter how bumpy and rough it was, it's going to feel good, hopefully, looking back. Or Mars might improve in the D9, and therefore you think that the Ketu journey might feel good. However tough it was worth it. In this particular chart, both of these planets improve in the Navamsha. So it's one of those things where I don't know this client. I don't know what they've been through, but I have some comfort as the astrologer that this journey is going to feel worthwhile, whatever that journey has been for this person. Well, also, most Vedic astrology enthusiasts will probably be drawn to the 5th house because we've got a lot of planets there. And we notice that it's a Lajit Avashta, that is a natural malefic in the 5th house. So that's the sun with benefic planets. And why is this considered to be an Avashta in Vedic astrology is because the 5th house is where we create our own kingdom, where we take our life path and put it in the direction that we want to go. So we all begin life in the 1st house, kind of inheriting where we're going. So it's great because we get a ticket to ride. So it's wonderful to arrive at the 1st house. Fantastic. But it is kind of at the 5th house that we are awake enough to say, well, this is who I am and this is what I want to do. We have a vision of where we want to take our life that's unique to us. And therefore, having a malefic there can make that challenging because we know that malefics give out their kashta. They give out their challenge and they create obstacles for us so that we can overcome them and learn how strong and powerful we truly are. However, those lessons will always be hard won and hard learned. It's something that in some ways we will learn despite the obstacles. It's by overcoming them that we learn how strong we are. And what's great about malefics is they really teach us to trust ourselves, whereas benefics help us so much. It might feel like grace, and we don't really know whether it was luck or whether we had any say in it, whether we really did anything, whether you had any agency with it. Whereas with malefics, if you're able to overcome them, you will definitely know you have agency. That's what they're teaching you. So this is happening in the 5th house. Now, we talked about the 5th house is legacy and creativity. It's also children. So this is telling us that there's a whole lot of really rich and important information for us to learn if we want to through Vedic astrology because we have a very interesting Avashta taking place. For me, these Lajit Avashtas are a little bit like a post-it note from the past telling us that this is important to work. But it can be very confusing to work one's way through that because, as we said, we've got 3 planets there. They end up ruling 5 houses. So the lot out of 12, it's nearly half the houses have a perspective and a piece of the pie going on in the 5th house. So, and, it's being aspected, also Rashi aspected by Rahu, it's being Rashi aspected by the moon. And we know that Legit of Ashta would pick up Mercury and Venus. But if you look at it the way that Ernst does, where we look at the chakra level, that Mars is ruling both of these. This is our power chakra, the Aries Scorpio chakra. One could consider even that the moon is in this Legit of Ashta and the moon is the ascendant lord. So the fifth house in this chart is absolutely packed with valuable information. Now, there are several yogas going on in this chart, and yogas are a great way to kind of look at the architecture of the chart because they talk about the relationships based on the placements. Generally, that's what the yogas are made from. So we've got some really beautiful placements here, noticing that Mercury and Venus are on an angle to Jupiter, and they're all in trines, and Jupiter also happens to be the ninth lord. So this is a very spiritual kind of architecture to have in the chart. It's both a Srinati yoga and a Sarasvati yoga. So both of those are indicating spiritual tendencies in the chart. And then the sun and moon are both in angles or trines. And so we talked about that. One's in the 10th, one's in the 5th. And this is a Shri Kanta yoga, and that also indicates spiritual tendencies. So without knowing this person, without really drilling down into the details of the planetary placements yet, just this layout is beginning to back up some of what we saw in our very first pass through the chart, which is that moon and Rahu conjunction in the 10th being so noticeable and important to the person because it's their ascendant lord and it's in the 10th. But we know that when the moon is with Rahu, it can cause a discontent with the external world. So that can turn someone to a spiritual journey. And now we've got these spiritual tendencies, so that's kind of all backing up. Plus, we know that we have Mars is a natural Raja Yoga. That is a natural feeling of righteous, good progress. And that's in a moksha house. And moksha houses are all about our evolution and our enlightenment. So we're beginning to see a lot of factors pointing to this person having an interest in the spiritual and non-material side of life. There are also some more difficult yogas in the chart. One is literally called a difficult yoga, and that is because we have a malefic in the 10th house. In this case, it's Rahu is in the 10th house. And when we have a malefic in the 10th house, it's very noticeable. We talked about it as the top of the sky. It's, going to show up in our life. It's going to definitely make an impression on us and maybe the people around us. And in this case, that's happening in Aries, which is owned by Mars. And Mars, the 10th lord, is also in what is considered to be a difficult house, which is the 8th house. And that is considered to be a difficult house because of its connection with unexpected changes, that we never know what's going to happen in the 8th house. It's called the house of sudden breaks and changes. It's not consistent, not regulated, predictable. So in that way, having our 10th lord, the most visible lord, in the 8th house could be considered this Dur yoga. And it might indicate that there's a lot of changes in the career, that the person, maybe they change job regularly, maybe they change calling of their job, maybe they feel that they haven't had that kind of career that has steadily built up in one company where they've got a reputation and everybody knows them. No, instead there's been this chopping and changing because of the connection between the 10th and the 8th, and also by having a malefic in the 10th. In this case, it's Rahu. So if this person has experienced ups and downs in their career, then that is right on target and very affirmed by the chart, as in don't take it personally that if that has been your experience, because that's right there in the chemistry, the alchemy of the chart. And then the other yoga that's difficult in the chart is that we have Venus, the 4th lord. So here's the 4th house, Libra, at the bottom. And we can see that Venus is actually hemmed in between malefics. So we've got K2 on one side and we've got Saturn on the other side, or Sun on the other side. I don't know where you want to call your hemming, but Venus is experiencing this pressure, the vice of having malefics pushing on either side of it. And then not only that, but we have a malefic in the fourth house as well. So when we see this, it gives us that reminder that listening to the heart center is great medicine, great remedy for this chart, because the fourth house is our heart. It's our heart. And when we have these malefic influences, we can get out of the habit of connecting with the heart because of the tough experiences, the disappointments that may have taken place in that space. And we can use our energy to live in other parts of our reality, in our mind or in our intellect, for example. And this particular setup is reminding us to make that commitment and discipline to listening to the heart center, because the heart center is always communicating to us complete truth in the present moment. That's what the heart does all day, all night, every day, every night. And whereas the mind and the intellect can contextualize and reframe, see things from a different perspective, perhaps twist things around sometimes, the heart just tells the truth as it is. So it can be really therapeutic with this combination to make sure that we extra connect to the heart center. And that can be as simple as breathing into the heart center and just listening for any messages that are coming, and compassionately, gently, openly accepting all of the feelings that are occurring as we breathe and listen to the heart center. And this is great remedy for the chart also because we have K2 in the fourth, regardless of what we just spoke about. K2 in the fourth means that K2 indicates our area of expertise, that we in previous lifetimes may have been an expert in our emotions. And in this lifetime, we always feel that we just cannot meet our own expectations of being emotionally controlled or emotionally skilled. And therefore we get frustrated that we're not as skilled with our emotions as we would like to be. Even if actually this person may be actually great with their emotions, but they may know inside that they're not as good as they'd like to be. That's what K2 does. It's a perfectionist. And even though the rest of us are like, you're amazing, K2 in that area of life will always give us the sense that we were better and we're not as good as we could be, should be. So therefore, listening to the heart center, relaxing, opening that space, just letting it be, letting it flow like a river, whatever comes, just being with that is great remedy. Excellent. All right. And there's a few other things to look at as we sum up the noticeable features of the chart. We have that Saturn Vesi Yoga. This was in the Elvis Presley podcast. If you listen to the podcast, that is that Saturn is rising after the sun, and it gives this ability to squeeze out of life all of the experiences. But that means that for whatever area of that life that is, we maybe overdo the squeezing, and that area of life kind of gets burned out, or ends up being shriveled up and dried up, completely spent. So it is a very good thing to have because we eke out everything from our experiences. We know that Saturn in this chart is ruling the 7th and the 8th. So this is also linking it back to that moksha experience that tells us again that this person is going to be really interested in pursuing spiritual knowledge. Now, I haven't gone around and spoken about each of the planets here. I will just let you know this person had amazing Saturn on the Shadbala, so strong on all of the areas, and except Chestabala. So it's really interesting when someone is very strong, a planet, but they lack the confidence with the planet. I'd be really interested. We're not speaking live, so I can't check in with that person. But I would just validate for you that this is a great Saturn, and it is working here in the 6th house, which is in some ways a great place to have Saturn, right? Because the 6th house is our daily routines and the things we must do and the discipline we must have. So while Saturn is a hard teacher, Saturn is also very capable of just do it, just move forward, just do the things that I have to do. So we didn't speak about all planets, but being as we're just talking about Saturn, just want to let you know what a great Saturn you have in Shadbala. All right. Now, finally, as we look at the overall features of the chart, I didn't want to reveal the birth card because I don't want you guys to trace back the birth date, but I will just let you know that it is linked to divine knowledge. This is about the person's just going to be really motivated to know more and learn more and to see the divine in everything, no matter what it is that they're doing. They're going to want to have that connection with the divine. And this is a lifetime to take your knowledge to the next level. And isn't that beautifully also highlighted by Jupiter here, the 9th Lord in the 9th house in Pisces. So yeah, great. Okay, so we've had a look at the noticeable features of the chart. What is it that this person specifically asked? So here is an anonymized version of the question. I want to know what is my higher calling and how do I make it work with my career? I want to learn and practice astrology, but I also know that it will take time. I just started a new job that's very interesting and I could really see myself growing with the company, but I don't want to live in this location permanently. I'd rather live in, and then the person mentions 2 other countries, both foreign countries. We want to have a child, but there's still so much I want to learn and places I need to explore. So where do I begin to pursue my higher calling? What's my role in this world that is in alignment with my higher path? Okay, so an astrologer loves this when you build a chart for a person and their question really matches up with what we've just been seeing. So as you listen to that question, can you hear how it speaks to so many of the noticeable features that were in the chart? Let's go have a look. We'll break it down. So first sentence was, I want to know what is my higher calling and how do I make it work with my career? So why are we not surprised about this? We're not surprised that this person would ask about career because their ascendant lord is in the house of career and they have Rahu in the house of career. So the Rahu, this head of the demon that is going out and exploring new territory, gives us a fascination, just an interest. We don't really know why. We don't have any book learning knowledge about it, but we are just drawn to that area. So whenever a client asks you a question and you see that Rahu is in the area of the chart where that question is taking place, you're kind of like, yep, looks like I've got the right birth data for this person. So tick, this person would be asking about career. Now, why do they want to know about their higher calling? Obviously, we talked already about that the 10th Lord is in a Raja Yoga. This is going to give a sense of auspicious grace to the person's career. So, of course, they're going to want a career that feels meaningful. And the other thing that we know is Jupiter is the 9th Lord in the 9th house. Jupiter is all about meaning and purpose. The 9th house is all about meaning and purpose. So we've got some strong indicators there telling us that this is important to the person. But what we do know is that Jupiter happens to be low in Digbala. I don't know whether this is going to show up on the video, but it's got 54% of the Digbala that it needs. And Digbala is the directional strength of a planet. And it helps us hear the planet and therefore be able to take action. So depending on where the planet is located in the chart, they all have their favorite places to be. And Jupiter is not in a place that we can hear it very strongly here. So the person has all of the architecture in the chart to predispose them to be interested in meaning and purpose, but they can't quite hear when and how and what to do. And this is why Jupiter with low Digbala can lead us to have regrets that we have not pursued a meaningful career or a meaningful life. And so isn't it just excellent reflection of this person's own self-awareness that they realize how important this is and they're raising this as the flag, a red flag for them that, this is not quite aligned with what I want for my life. Let's continue to break down this question. I want to learn and practice astrology, but I also know that it will take time. So Why are we not surprised about that? This is because Mars is this natural Raja Yoga of the 5th Lord and the 10th Lord, and it's in the 8th house of occult knowledge. So this is an enormous tick, 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 tick that the person is going to be interested in pursuing astrology as work. Also, analysis, research, psychology, journalism, investigation, spying. The 8th house is full of really interesting careers, but astrology is definitely one of them. So the 10th Lord of work is in the 8th house of astrology. So we would think that this person would be attracted to working in astrology. And then isn't it interesting that Jupiter is the 9th Lord of higher education, which is what this person would be doing to get their degree in astrology or get their qualification in astrology. They need to use their 9th house. And Jupiter rules that house, and Jupiter also rules the 6th house of hard work. So it's really interesting that even in the language that people use, we can almost reveal the ascendants. If you're into neuro-linguistic programming like I am, you're always kind of fascinated as to whether you can tell someone's ascendant just from the language combinations that they choose. So it's great that this person acknowledges that it will take time to learn astrology, and Jupiter is helping the person know that. I've just started a new job that's very interesting, and I could really see myself growing with the company. I don't want to live in this country permanently though, so it's just for now. I'd rather live in, and then there are 2 other different foreign countries mentioned. Again, why does this not surprise us when we look at the features of the chart? We have got Rahu in the 10th, and Rahu is foreign lands and foreigners. It's crazy, unexpected things out of the ordinary. So this person is already working in a country that is not their birth country. And they're revealing in their question that, they want to move to one or other of these other 2 foreign countries. So that is what we would expect. The 10th house is what we're known for. We've got Rahu there. This person is going to be known for working in foreign places. So yes, we're going to look at timings a little bit down the track in this video, and just happens to be Rahu Dasha at the moment. So that's another indicator. No wonder this person is currently working overseas. And then the 9th Lord in the 9th house is also an indicator of a world traveler. So there's a lot of indicators here that the person may live in a foreign land, work in a foreign land. We also know that Rahu is very interesting. So the person said, I've just started a new job. That's very Rahu in the 10th. It's very interesting. That's very Rahu in the 10th. And I could really see myself growing with this company. Now we know that Rahu relates to chemistry and medicines, drugs. So this person may, and we've got the 8th house of analysis there. So this person may do something around analysis and research in relation to those things. And we already know from the yoga of the 10th Lord being in the 8th with a malefic in the 10th, the person may change careers. So that the person doesn't see themselves permanently there seems really backed up by this chart too. Okay. Now, we want to have a child, but there's still so much that I want to learn and places I need to explore. So, the 10th Lord of career is also the Lord of children. That's Mars, ruling the 10th and the 5th. So these things get wound up together, children and career. And that might mean that your career involves children for some people, but for other people, it's going to put them on a continuum or on a dynamic where maybe they're opposed to each other. Like, how can I do the career and have children? How can I have children and do the career? It becomes a little bit one or the other. So we're not surprised about that. Rahu is in the 10th house, so it wants to give us lots of opportunities to explore the external world. That is what it is doing in Aries and in the 10th house. If we think about what Aries is all about, the energy field that this is taking place in, it is about new initiatives, starting things, exploring something new. It is the natural first sign of the zodiac. It is the beginning. So of course Rahu is just filling our awareness with new and exciting possibilities. So that is right on track. We have a lot of planets in the 5th house. And this is going to create confusion about what to do in relation to children because there are many competing agendas taking place in the 5th house. So no wonder this person is not clear about whether to have children or when to have children. This is not their main question, is not when to have it or should we have. The person's just expressing that tension and between the exciting opportunities and the timing of having children. We'll just point out that the 5th Lord of Children is in the 8th house, which we talked about, sudden breaks and changes, unpredictability. So it's kind of, again, validating this confusion about children. And in this house of children, where we've got everything going on, we have the 12th Lord in there. So that also lets us know that children and linking the 12th and the 5th, the children and that which is leaving our life. So, an indication to adopt children or possibly some difficulties in conceiving children. This is something that we would need a whole session properly to talk about. But this is why the person is experiencing this confusion about what to do around children. And the 11th Lord, the yoga breaker, is also there in the 5th house. So Venus is in that 5th house too. However, Venus is the 4th Lord of happiness in that 5th house, indicating happiness with children. So that's why this person, it's not a clear, direct path to having children for this person. If their ascendant Lord was in the 5th Lord was in the ascendant, we'd be much more confident that this is something that is just on their to-do list and, there is no avoiding it. That's what we're going to do. In this case, this is something with a lot of indicators. It's connected pretty much to all areas of the chart, or to a lot. It's connected to the ascendant, Moon, Rahu, Mars, 5th house, and Ketu, all of those. So, just point those out. The ascendant, Ketu, 5th house, Mars, and the 10th house are all intertwined in this decision around children because of the Rashi aspects. So very validating that this person is right on track. So where do I begin to pursue my higher calling? What is my role in this world that is in alignment with my higher path? Okay, so we've got a Mars Raja Yoga of the 10th Lord and the 5th Lord. The 10th Lord is about the 10th house is about the external world. The 5th house is about improvement, and Cancer ascendant set up to improve the external world. And it's through Mars, this idealistic planet of righteous, auspicious action. So that this person wants to be in alignment speaks very much to this beautiful Mars Raja Yoga. We also have Rahu with the moon that is creating an excellent capacity for attunement to the inner, that is the moon, and to the outer, the 10th house. So the person's even asking this question about aligning these two things kind of speaks to the positive potential of Moon Rahu, that the person can attune. So they've got the Moon Rahu wanting to attune their intuition to the external world. We've got Mars, the 5th and the 10th. That's kind of the trine and the angle. They're also attuning action to Dharma. So again, it's speaking to the voice of this person. What we already know is that Jupiter, the planet that is telling them when and how and where to take meaningful, purposeful action, we can't hear it as well as the other planets. So this is probably what is leading us to the confusion about how to align these things. Not being able to hear Jupiter, and then Rahu just creating confusion. That is what it does for everybody in everybody's chart. And here it's doing it in the career. But actually we have really great fundamentals in this chart. So what about a bit of timing? Is that going to give us some insight into answering this question? So here I am looking at the Vimshatari Nakshatra Dasha I'm looking at it as tropical nakshatras. If you want to talk to me about that, just be in touch. So when I look at this as tropical timing, I place this person currently in Rahu Dasha. And Rahu, we know, is in the 10th house. That is all about career, activity, and exploring the external. And it's in Aries. And Rahu in Aries is helping us bite off more than we can chew. And that is because Ketu is in Libra. Libra is that sign, that energy field that is very considered, evaluates, weighs up the consequences. You know, it's the scales, right? So it's incredibly gifted and wise at making strategic decisions. Venus is the planet that helps us make good decisions. It owns Libra. When we have Ketu there, this person already has an expertise in being very considered, and life being what it is throwing Rahu into Aries to encourage this person to take on more than they would think is wise. And that's how we start a whole new journey and get a chance to burn through and detach from more of our unconscious karma. So when anybody's in Rahu Dasha, it is unpredictable because Rahu is unconscious or subconscious. It's bringing up things that we don't expect, things that we don't even know are there. That's its job. It's a great gift to have Rahu Dasha during your conscious life because we get to see those things that are being spat out in front of us by Rahu. So, but it's bumpy and changeable. As we said, as far as we know in the chart, Rahu is looking good in terms of how we'll feel about it at the end. So whatever is coming up, hopefully that stimulation is actually, building us, growing us, helping us love ourselves even more. So Rahu Dasha. And then coming up in Rahu Dasha from next September, so that's 18 months away, we've got Rahu Moon, and then in March 2026, it becomes Rahu Mars. So I put those on there because you'll know that the moon is in the 10th house and it's the ascendant lord, and Mars is owning the 10th house and the house of children, and it's in the 8th house. So for me, these first 3 stages of the timing speak about that let's continue to expect that we will be exploring exciting opportunities, that work might change, our location of living might change. This is a time of life when there's lots of exciting stimulation. It seems to be coming up, centered around the career, which is exactly the kind of questions you are asking. So this seems to be very validating that you're right on track in terms of the timing. This definitely indicates that one will continue to work in foreign, or it supports the idea of continuing to work in foreign lands during this period of time, which was one of the questions. And then after we finish Rahu Dasha, beginning in April 2027, we would have Jupiter Dasha coming up. And Jupiter Dasha is going to have a different energy from Rahu Dasha because remember, Rahu, then where it's placed is really in this very dynamic conversation with Mars, with what's going on in the 5th house, with the ascendant, with Ketu. All of that's kind of in a cohort together. Jupiter Dasha is moving us over to that Pisces corner of the chart. And we're expecting that it will have a different energy because it's the 9th Lord in the 9th house. The 9th Lord is all about meaning and purpose. This certainly seems to be a time when that is going to be even more indicated. Perhaps we'll move closer to our parents as Jupiter rules the 9th house of parents, and it is the 9th Lord. Jupiter's also a karaka for children, so it's a bit of a no-brainer to say that this might be a time when children could be involved. However, can I also just say that Rahu Mars Dasha, Mars is the 5th Lord of children as well. So I don't want to exclusively say that, but obviously Jupiter is a karaka for children. We could see residence in a distant land because the ninth house is distant. And obviously more sense of purpose, wanting to bring even more meaningful action into one's life. Jupiter is also a karaka for astrology and astrologers. So if you feel that your studies are taking time, I'm just wondering whether that is because you want to get ready for Jupiter Dasha that's coming up. So when I look at this timing, the main message that it gives to me, not being able to speak to you directly and kind of tweak it, is that we can relax about timing, that you are right on track. Everything that's happening seems to reflect the overall themes of the Vimshatari Dasha system. So maybe this can give us a sense that it's all in good hands. We can just sit back into the armchair of time, into the armchair of timing, and just allow it to do its job. Rahu Dasha is not a lot about sitting in an armchair. So I'm sure even if you do relax into this timing, there's still a whole lot of stuff going on. If we think about your chart, we're going to have Rahu actually entering Aries by transit this year, and then it'll be there for a couple of years. So we would be expecting that in this Rahu Dasha, we're going to continue to receive plenty of Rahu stimulation. So as I'm suggesting to sit back and relax about the timing because you're on track, I'm sure it will continue to be incredibly stimulating and you'll get to explore lots of new things. So where does that leave us? What is a summary of what we've been talking about? This is the chart of someone with enormous potential to work in astrology if that was something that they wanted to do. They've got that Raj Yoga of the 10th Lord in the 8th house. 8th house is always associated with occult knowledge. We've also got the 5th Lord in the 8th house. In astrology, Vedic astrology, we love to see 5 with 8 in terms of astrologers because 5 is the intellect and the mantras, those sacred texts, and 8 is the knowledge, the occult knowledge. So we love seeing 5 and 8 together for an astrologer. We've got K2 in a moksha house. K2 is showing us where we have previous expertise. So this is someone who's bringing all of that moksha expertise to astrology. We've got Jupiter in own home in the 9th house. We've also got that Saturn Vesi Yoga helping the person squeeze out everything they can, and it rules the 8th house. So very hopeful that it's going to do that. And the moon is the ascendant. Moon is a very intuitive planet that's very helpful for astrology. It's in the 10th house and it is conjunct with Rahu, and that provides us with flashes of inspiration or flashes of intuition of just knowing things. So all of these things are great Lego building block pieces for an astrologer. The person is currently going through Rahu Dasha. Rahu Dasha is unpredictable. It is about bringing up subconscious things into manifestation so we can deal with them. Rahu gives us that sense, or we might feel that it is taking us a long time to mature, or other people might think that because Rahu Dasha is really dealing with stuff in the back room and bringing it out into the present, right in our face and helping us to deal with it. But it's other people who are not in Rahu Dasha might seem like they're moving ahead, while Rahu Dasha is kind of just stimulating us with lots of things, but we don't really know what it's all for or where we're going. So some compassion for being in Rahu Dasha. In my opinion, the timing seems very supportive of all of the things that you've spoken about. It's natural in this chart to feel confused about having children. We've got lots of planets in the 5th, all with their different agendas. We've got this Lajita Vashti in the 5th. We've got the 11th Lord Yoga Breaker in the 5th. And Mars, the Lord of the 5th, is also ruling the career. So we can feel that tension between sacrificing one for the other. So that's an area that is great from this reading. What is great to take away is to investigate or be open to investigating all of one's complex motivations and feelings and desires about having children and not having children. And obviously I'm here if you want to follow that up more deeply. And there are signs that things are going to work out well. We talked about Mars and Saturn improving in the D9. I also put up here the yoga scores for you because look at this positive yoga score for Mars, which we've talked almost endlessly about on this recorded reading. Mars is a really important planet for Cancer ascendants. It's a really important planet for this question about astrology in this chart. And it has a positive yoga score of 8.2, letting us know that it's going to be able to exponentially make the good things better. If there are yogas involving Mars, which in this case they're about work and children, they're working, they've got that 8.2. It's quite a high positive yoga score. Just let you know, because we're on screen, that Venus and Saturn also have very good yoga scores. So while it may be a time of confusion, that is natural because we're in Rahu Dasha. While it may be a time of confusion, if an astrologer can look at anything, what she can look at in this case seems to be indicating good. So, you can just relax a little bit. So what is it that we can take away in terms of action? This person was saying, what can I actually do? My number one thing from looking at this chart would be, let's strengthen that Jupiter Digbala, because not being able to listen to Jupiter can give us regrets about not doing something meaningful with our life. We know that we have a great fifth lord because Mars and this Raja Yoga we keep talking about. So the fifth house is associated with mantra. I would do a Jupiter mantra. So make a commitment to make time to listen to the Jupiter mantra. I've included Ryan's Jupiter mantra here, or to repeat it yourself. And as you do, listen to that wisdom, be open to the compassion and the abundance and those qualities of Jupiter. So we want to, what astrology helps us recognize is an area that, because of the layout of the chart, it has challenges. So we need to use our conscious awareness to activate that strength. It's not going to happen if we're on autopilot, but astrology helps us to see where those areas are, and then we can use our consciousness. And that means effort, using our intellect to bring our awareness to somewhere that is naturally underdeveloped. So I would do the Jupiter mantra. I would also make a practice of connecting with the heart center. And you'll know whether this is important for you or not, because I'm not speaking to you. So disregard it if it doesn't make any sense to you. But looking at the chart, it's a remedy for the Moon Rahu conjunction. It anchors that intuitive rocket fuel that you have in the 10th house. It anchors it in the truth of the present moment in the heart center. The heart's always in the present, just moving the blood around the body, never stops, never questions, never analyzes the blood or whatever. It just stays in the present and responds exactly to the chemistry that's going in the body right now. So it's a great place for the Moon Rahu conjunction to be anchored. And it's a good remedy for having a malefic in the fourth lord and the fourth lord under malefic influences. So this could be a breath practice. Just give your attention to the heart center with your eyes closed and imagine breathing in through the heart center and out through the heart center. We're thinking of it like the sternum, the breastbone in the middle of the chest. And as you do that, being open, unjudgmental, no regulating, no controlling, no K2 perfectionism, just allowing the heart to speak and be guided by that. So you can add that to your existing meditation practice. And then my other takeaway from this reading would be to contemplate what's going on in the fifth house, because it is complex and there is information there which might help you make that decision and come to that place from a sense of awareness and a sense that I've done my due diligence and I have examined my heart and all of the conflicting energies that are going into any decision around having children. And then finally relax into the timing, in my opinion, knowing that things are going well, you're on track. All of the questions that you were asked were right on track with the chart, right on track, as it turns out, with the timing. So big tick, you've got it. You'll know when to... Your questions reveal that you're aligned with your timing at the moment, so therefore you will know when to take these actions because you're already aligned with the timing, especially if we're able to increase our awareness of Jupiter's Digbala. Wonderful. All right. I hope that was helpful, and that it validates you and that you see yourself and your enormous potential and gifts, that this pre-recorded reading has helped you grab a hold of those or be in touch with those in a more real and authentic way. I am here if you would like to follow up. You now have access to my follow-up rate. They are half the price of a normal reading. So now you come meet me on Zoom and we can go through anything more specific or more detailed that we didn't want to put in here for the anonymity side of things. And if you have enjoyed watching this video, I want us to all give enormous thanks and gratitude to this person for their bravery and courage, allowing us to learn from their chart. And I would welcome you to go along to my shop and purchase your own Vedic Astrology pre-recorded birth reading. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.